My name is Rosie, and I am 68 years old. Just this morning, my 42-year-old son Jason stood in my living room holding legal papers and gave me an ultimatum that shattered 40 years of memories. "You have 30 days to decide, Mom," he said, his voice cold as winter steel. "Either sign over your pension to help this family or find somewhere else to live." I stared at this man I had raised, remembering the little boy who once promised he would take care of me forever. As I watched him walk away without looking back, I realized that sometimes the people we trust most are the ones who hurt us deepest. Before I share how one signature changed both our lives forever, I would love to know where you are watching from today. Please hit that like button if you have ever trusted someone completely, and do not forget to subscribe because this story will show you exactly what happens when family loyalty gets a price tag. Let me take you back to where this all began because understanding my story means understanding the foundation that was built on love and torn down by greed. I met my husband Frank in 1979 at St. Mary's Hospital, where I worked as a registered nurse in the cardiac unit. He was 32, a master plumber with hands rough from honest work and a smile that could light up the darkest room. I was 23, fresh out of nursing school and completely unprepared for how deeply I would fall for this kind-hearted man who brought me coffee during my double shifts. We married 18 months later in a small ceremony at my parents' church. Frank wore his only suit navy blue with a thin silver tie, and I wore my mother's wedding dress, altered to fit my smaller frame. We had exactly $847 in our joint savings account, and dreams bigger than our bank balance. 3 months after the wedding, we found a small 2-bedroom house on Maple Street for $62,000. The paint was peeling. The kitchen faucet dripped constantly, and the furnace made sounds like a dying animal. But it was ours. Frank worked overtime every weekend for 2 years to save the down payment. I picked up extra shifts in the emergency room, coming home with stories about heart attack patients and accident victims that made Frank hold me tighter each night. We learned to stretch every dollar eating pasta 3 nights a week and shopping at thrift stores for our furniture. By Christmas of 1981, we had saved enough for the down payment and closing costs. The day we got the keys, Frank carried me over the threshold like we were movie stars. We spent our first night on an air mattress in the empty living room eating Chinese takeout by candlelight because the electricity would not be turned on until Monday. Frank promised me that someday our home would be filled with children's laughter and family dinners around a proper dining table. Jason came along in March of 1982 after 3 heartbreaking miscarriages that had tested our faith and our marriage. I will never forget the moment the doctor placed him in my arms, all 7 pounds and 3 ounces of perfect baby boy. Frank painted the nursery sky blue and spent weeks assembling a crib that came with instructions in 3 languages. We filled that little room with board books and stuffed animals dreaming of the man our son would become. Frank taught Jason how to throw a baseball in our backyard every Sunday after church. I taught him how to read before he started kindergarten, curled up together on the couch with picture books about brave knights and magical kingdoms. Jason was our miracle baby, the child we had prayed for through years of disappointment and loss. Every scraped knee got a kiss, every bad dream got a bedtime story, and every achievement got celebrated like he had won an Olympic medal. Those early years were golden, filled with birthday parties in our small backyard and Christmas mornings around a tree that Frank cut down himself from a farm 30 minutes outside town. We were not rich by any measure, but we were wealthy in the ways that truly mattered. Our house became a home through decades of shared meals, homework help at the kitchen table, and family movie nights on our old sectional sofa. Frank never missed a single one of Jason's baseball games, even when his arthritis made sitting on those metal bleachers painful. I packed lunches for school field trips and volunteered for every bake sale and fundraiser. We were the kind of parents who believed that love and attention could overcome any obstacle, that consistency and care would raise a good man. When Frank passed away suddenly from a massive heart attack in September of 2019, he left me devastated but financially secure. His pension from the plumbers union combined with Social Security and my own small retirement account provided $2,800 every month. The house was paid off. Frank having made the final payment just 6 months before his death, as if he somehow knew his time was limited. Jason was 37, then working in construction management and living in an apartment across town with his girlfriend, Amanda. The funeral was small but meaningful, held at the same church where Frank and I had married 38 years earlier. Jason spoke beautifully about his father, sharing memories of weekend fishing trips and the workshop lessons where Frank had taught him to fix anything that broke. In the months following Frank's death, Jason visited regularly, helping with yard work and household repairs that had always been his father's responsibility. We would sit at the kitchen table after dinner, sharing stories about Frank and planning small improvements to the house. It was during one of these conversations that Jason suggested I consider transferring ownership of the house to him. "Mom, you should think about estate planning," he said one evening in March of 2020. "If something happens to you, the house will go through probate. That could take months and cost thousands in legal fees. If you transfer it to me now, we can avoid all that hassle and save money on inheritance taxes." His logic seemed sound and his intentions appeared pure. Jason had always been responsible with money, and I trusted him completely. The idea of protecting our family home from legal complications made perfect sense. We met with a lawyer the following week, and I signed the deed transfer documents on a Tuesday morning in April. The lawyer explained everything carefully. I would retain a life estate, which meant I could live in the house for the rest of my natural life. Jason would own the property, but could not sell it or make major decisions without my consent. It seemed like the perfect solution, protecting both my security and Jason's inheritance. "Mom, this house will always be your home," Jason promised as we left the lawyer's office. "Nothing will ever change that. I'm just making sure everything is legal and proper for the future." I believed him completely. After 40 years of marriage to his father and 20 years of watching Jason grow into a responsible man, I had no reason to doubt his word. That signature felt like a smart decision, a way to protect everything Frank and I had built together. Looking back now, I realize that was the moment I unknowingly signed away my security and set the stage for the betrayal that would change everything between us. The first cracks in our perfect family picture began appearing in the summer of 2021, though at the time they seemed like normal adjustments that any family might face. Jason had been dating Amanda for 3 years, and their relationship had grown serious enough that marriage seemed inevitable. Amanda was 28, 10 years younger than Jason, with blonde hair that she wore in a perfect bob and a smile that never quite reached her eyes. She worked in digital marketing for a mid-sized company downtown, always carrying her laptop and talking about conversion rates and social media algorithms in a way that made me feel ancient. Amanda was polite enough during their visits, but I noticed how she would glance around the house with barely concealed disappointment, as if she were mentally cataloging everything that needed updating. When they announced their engagement in August, I was genuinely happy for Jason. He deserved love and companionship, and Amanda clearly made him smile. The wedding was planned for the following spring, a small ceremony at a country club with 50 guests and a reception that cost more than Frank and I had spent on our entire first year of marriage. After the wedding in May of 2022, Amanda moved into the house on Maple Street. Jason had asked if this arrangement would work for me, and I had enthusiastically agreed. The house had 4 bedrooms, far more space than I needed, and I looked forward to having family around again after feeling lonely since Frank's death. Amanda immediately began making changes, which I tried to see as natural nesting behavior. She replaced the living room curtains with something she called modern minimalist, painted over the wallpaper in the dining room that Frank and I had chosen together, and rearranged the furniture to create what she called better flow. I said nothing, reminding myself that this was now their home too, and young couples needed to make their own mark. But the changes went deeper than decoration. Amanda complained that the house smelled old, despite my daily cleaning and the air fresheners I strategically placed in every room. She mentioned several times that the kitchen needed updating, pointing out the avocado green appliances that Frank and I had saved for months to afford back in 1985. Jason, who had always been sensitive to everyone's feelings, found himself caught in the middle. I could see the stress in his shoulders during family dinners, the way he would change the subject when Amanda made comments about improving the house. He still helped with household maintenance, but now he asked permission before touching anything, deferring to Amanda's opinions in a way that felt foreign and uncomfortable. The real tension began in October when Amanda announced she was pregnant. The news should have brought pure joy, but instead it triggered a series of conversations about space and privacy that made my stomach clench with anxiety. I was thrilled about becoming a grandmother, already imagining the nursery we would set up, and the bedtime stories I would read to my grandchild. "We need to think about logistics," Amanda said during dinner one evening, her hand resting on her still flat belly. "Babies need quiet environments for proper development, and we will need space for all the equipment. Cribs, changing tables, toys, a playroom eventually." I nodded enthusiastically, already planning how we could convert the guest bedroom into a beautiful nursery. But Amanda's next words stopped my heart. "We were thinking maybe you could move down to the basement level," she continued, not meeting my eyes. "We could fix it up really nice for you, make it like a little apartment. That way the baby would have the upstairs bedrooms and you would have privacy too." Jason shifted uncomfortably in his chair, but he did not contradict his wife. I felt something cold settle in my chest, but I forced myself to smile. These were new parents planning for their first child, and I wanted to be supportive. The basement level had a small bathroom and could be livable with some work. "That could work," I heard myself saying, though every word felt like swallowing glass. "We could make it comfortable down there." Over the next month, I spent my own money transforming the basement into a living space. I bought a small refrigerator, a microwave, and a comfortable chair for reading. I hung pictures on the walls and brought down some of my favorite books. I told myself this was temporary, just until the baby was older and we could figure out a better arrangement. Amanda's pregnancy progressed normally, but the distance between us grew wider. I found myself using the back door to enter and exit the house, trying not to disturb their routines upstairs. I cooked my meals separately and ate alone in the basement, listening to the sounds of their life continuing above my head. Emma was born in June of 2023, a beautiful baby girl with Jason's dark eyes and Amanda's delicate features. I was allowed to hold her for a few minutes in the hospital, my heart overflowing with love for this tiny person who carried on our family legacy. But when they brought Emma home, the rules became clear immediately. Amanda was breastfeeding exclusively and needed quiet for proper bonding. I could visit with the baby for 30 minutes each morning and evening, but only when invited. The rest of the time, I was expected to stay downstairs and not interfere with their parenting routines. I watched my son transform into a devoted father, carrying Emma around the house and singing lullabies in the same voice he had used as a child when playing with his toy soldiers. But he seemed to exist in a bubble that included only Amanda and the baby, as if I had become a peripheral figure in the house where I had lived for over 40 years. By September, Jason had lost his job at the construction company due to budget cuts industry-wide. Amanda was still on unpaid maternity leave, and suddenly, their financial situation became precarious. The stress showed in their faces during our brief encounters and the hushed conversations I could hear through the ceiling late at night. It was during this vulnerable time that Jason first mentioned the idea of me contributing financially to household expenses. He approached the subject carefully, almost apologetically, but his words still hit me like cold water. "Mom, I know this is awkward, but we are struggling with the mortgage and utilities," he said one evening when Amanda was upstairs giving Emma a bath. "You are living here too, using electricity and water. Would it be fair for you to help with some of the bills? Maybe $1,000 a month?" I agreed immediately, wanting to help my son during a difficult time. $1,000 still left me $1,800 from my pension for personal expenses, groceries, and medical costs. It seemed reasonable, even generous, given that I was family, living in what was technically now their house. But I could not shake the feeling that something fundamental had shifted in our relationship, that I had somehow become a tenant in the home I had spent 40 years creating. The financial arrangement that began as temporary help quickly evolved into something more demanding and permanent, creating a dynamic that left me feeling like a stranger in my own home. What started as a reasonable request for assistance transformed into an expectation, then a demand, and finally, a weapon used against me. In December of 2023, just 3 months after our original agreement, Jason approached me with news that the $1,000 contribution was no longer sufficient. He explained that heating costs had increased, Emma's medical expenses were higher than expected, and Amanda's maternity leave had been extended without pay. "We need to raise your contribution to $1,500 a month," Jason announced during one of our increasingly formal conversations. "It is just temporary, until I find better employment and Amanda goes back to work." The increase stung financially and emotionally, but I agreed because Jason was my son, and families help each other during crisis. $1,500 left me $1,300 from my pension, which was enough to cover groceries, medications, and basic personal needs. I told myself this sacrifice was necessary and temporary. However temporary, became permanent as winter stretched into spring. Amanda's maternity leave extended further, supposedly due to postpartum complications that required her to stay home with Emma. Jason's job search proved more challenging than expected, with several promising opportunities falling through at the last minute. In February of 2024, another conversation brought another financial demand disguised as a practical suggestion. Amanda had been researching childcare costs and discovered that quality daycare for infants cost over $1,200 monthly. "We have been thinking," Amanda said, speaking for both of them in a way that had become her habit. "Instead of paying for expensive daycare when I go back to work, maybe Rosie could watch Emma during the day. It would save us money and give Emma the benefit of family care." The proposal initially sounded wonderful. I loved my granddaughter and welcomed the chance to spend more time with her. But as the arrangement took shape, I realized that watching Emma meant providing full-time childcare for 10 to 12 hours daily, while Amanda pursued what she called freelance marketing opportunities from the upstairs office. My days became structured around Emma's needs. I woke at 6 in the morning to prepare bottles, changed diapers every 2 hours, managed nap schedules, and provided constant supervision and entertainment. By evening, I was exhausted but still expected to prepare dinner for the family since I was already in the kitchen anyway. The physical demands were challenging for a woman in her late 60s. Lifting a growing toddler repeatedly throughout the day aggravated the arthritis in my back. Broken sleep from Emma's nighttime crying left me constantly tired. The emotional isolation was equally difficult as I spent entire days speaking only in baby talk and simple phrases. Meanwhile, Amanda's freelance work seemed to consist mainly of long phone conversations with friends and extended shopping trips that lasted most of the afternoon. When I mentioned that Emma had been fussy or needed attention during these outings, Amanda would respond with criticism about my caregiving methods. "She probably senses your anxiety," Amanda would say. "Babies pick up on negative energy. Maybe you should try being more positive around her." Jason, caught between supporting his wife and maintaining peace, rarely defended me during these exchanges. His silence felt like betrayal, abandonment of the close relationship we had shared since his father's death. In May of 2024, Jason finally secured new employment with a smaller construction firm. The position paid less than his previous job, but it provided steady income and health insurance for the family. I assumed this development would ease the financial pressure and allow me to reduce my monthly contribution. Instead, the opposite occurred. Jason and Amanda had grown accustomed to my $1,500 monthly payment and had incorporated it into their budget as essential income rather than temporary assistance. When I suggested reducing my contribution back to the original $1,000, the conversation became heated. "Mom, we have obligations now," Jason explained with a tone that had become increasingly cold. "The mortgage, utilities, food for 4 people, Emma's needs. We cannot just cut our income because my salary is slightly better." I pointed out that I was providing free childcare worth over $1,000 monthly, in addition to my financial contribution and household labor. The calculation seemed unfair, with me providing over $2,500 in cash and services while living in a basement room with limited privileges. "You live here too," Amanda interjected. "You benefit from our home improvements and share our groceries. The arrangement is fair for everyone." But the arrangement did not feel fair. I was working harder than I had since my nursing days, contributing more financially than I could afford, and receiving less respect and autonomy than a paid employee would expect. The house where I had raised my family and created 40 years of memories had become a workplace where I was both employee and tenant. The breaking point came in early August, when Amanda announced her second pregnancy. The news should have brought joy, but instead it brought a family meeting where Jason and Amanda presented their financial analysis for supporting 2 children. "We have been discussing our budget," Jason began, his voice taking on the formal tone he now used for all serious conversations. "With another baby coming, our expenses will increase significantly. We need more financial security." Amanda held a folder containing printed spreadsheets and charts as if our family relationship had become a business proposition requiring documentation. We have calculated that our household expenses average $3,800 monthly, she continued. Your current contribution covers less than 40% of your share. We need a more equitable arrangement. The word equitable hung in the air like a threat. I realized they had stopped seeing me as family and started viewing me as a financial resource to be optimized for their benefit. What kind of arrangement? I asked, though I suspected the answer would be devastating. Jason and Amanda exchanged a look that spoke of private conversations and predetermined decisions. We need your entire pension, Jason said quietly. All $2,800 every month. In exchange, we will cover all household expenses, food utilities, and medical costs. You will have a home and security without worrying about bills. The proposal was presented as generosity, but I recognized it for what it truly was, financial control designed to make me completely dependent on their goodwill. They wanted my independence, my autonomy, and my ability to make choices about my own life. I asked for time to consider their proposal, knowing that my answer would determine whether I remained family or became a financial prisoner in the house my husband and I had built, with 4 decades of love and sacrifice. The ultimatum came on August 15th at exactly 9:30 in the morning, delivered by my son in the basement room that had become both my refuge and my prison. I was drinking coffee from the mug Frank had given me for our 20th anniversary when Jason descended the stairs carrying a manila folder that would change the trajectory of both our lives forever. He did not knock, did not ask permission to enter, but simply walked into my small living space as if he owned every inch of it, which, legally speaking, he did. His face wore an expression I had never seen before, a cold determination that erased any trace of the loving boy I had raised, or the grateful son who had once promised to care for me always. We need to settle this today, Mom, he announced, setting the folder on my small dining table with a decisive thud. Amanda and I have discussed this extensively, and we cannot continue the current arrangement. It is not sustainable for our growing family. I set down my coffee cup, noting how my hand trembled slightly. What arrangement are you talking about, Jason? I thought we had already agreed on my monthly contribution. His laugh was harsh, devoid of any warmth or humor. $1,500 is nowhere near enough anymore. Do you have any idea what it costs to run a household these days? Food prices, utilities, insurance. Emma's needs, and now another baby coming. We are drowning financially while you sit down here hoarding your pension money. The word hoarding struck me like a physical blow. I was contributing more than half my income to their household while providing free childcare and housework. The remaining $1,300 covered my personal expenses, medications, clothing, and small comforts that made life bearable. I am not hoarding anything, I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. I give you $1,500 every month, plus I watch Emma 12 hours a day. I also help with cooking and cleaning. I think I am contributing plenty. Jason opened the folder and pulled out several sheets of paper covered with numbers, charts, and calculations. Amanda's marketing background had apparently extended to financial analysis of my value as a family member. We have done the math, he continued, spreading the papers across my table. Your total household consumption, including utilities, food, space usage, and services received, equals approximately $2,400 monthly. You are currently underpaying by $900. I stared at the spreadsheets, seeing my life reduced to line items and percentages. They had calculated the square footage of my basement room, estimated my share of the electric bill, and assigned monetary value to every aspect of my existence in their house. Furthermore, Jason continued, with the second baby coming, we need Emma's full-time care to continue, plus additional help with household management. Amanda cannot handle 2 children and maintain her freelance career without more support. The papers included a detailed proposal for my new role in the household. I would provide childcare for both children, prepare all family meals, handle most cleaning responsibilities, and contribute my entire pension to the household budget. In return, I would receive food, shelter, and basic necessities. Essentially, Jason explained, you would sign over your pension to us and we would handle all household expenses. You would not have to worry about bills or financial management. We would take care of everything. I looked at my son, searching for any trace of the man who had once thanked me for the sacrifices I had made to raise him alone after his father died. Instead, I saw a stranger who had calculated the exact monetary value of my existence and found it insufficient. And if I refuse this arrangement, I asked, though I suspected I already knew the answer. Jason's expression hardened further. Then you will need to find alternative living arrangements. We cannot continue subsidizing your lifestyle when we have our own family responsibilities. The word subsidizing was particularly cruel, implying that my 40 years of creating this home, my decades of sacrifice for his welfare, and my current financial and practical contributions were somehow inadequate charity on their part. You are telling me to choose between giving you all my money or losing my home, I said, wanting to be completely clear about the ultimatum. I am telling you that this family needs to be practical about finances, Jason replied. You are 68 years old, Mom. How much money do you really need? You do not travel. You do not have expensive hobbies. Your medical expenses are covered by Medicare. Your pension could secure our children's future instead of sitting in your account earning minimal interest. I realized then that Jason and Amanda had been planning this conversation for weeks, possibly months. They had analyzed my financial situation, calculated their optimal return on investment, and determined that my complete dependence was worth more to them than my partial independence. I need time to think about this, I said, though every instinct was screaming that thinking would not change the fundamental betrayal I was witnessing. Jason shook his head. We need an answer today. Amanda is stressed about the pregnancy, and this financial uncertainty is affecting her health. We cannot wait while you deliberate about obvious realities. He pulled out one final document, a legal paper that would transfer my pension payments directly to their bank account. The paperwork was already prepared, requiring only my signature to complete my financial surrender. Sign this today, and everything gets easier for everyone, Jason said, producing a pen from his shirt pocket. Refuse, and you have 30 days to find somewhere else to live. Amanda and I have already consulted with a lawyer about the eviction process. I stared at the documents, understanding that this moment represented the complete destruction of our family relationship. Jason was not asking for help. He was demanding my complete subjugation. He was not offering security. He was threatening homelessness. The little boy I raised would never threaten his mother with homelessness, I said quietly. The little boy you raised grew up and has responsibilities now, Jason replied without emotion. I cannot let sentiment interfere with my family's welfare. I looked around the basement room that had become my world at the pictures of Frank and young Jason on my dresser, at the few personal possessions I had been allowed to keep. 40 years of building a life, 20 years of widowhood managed independently, and countless sacrifices for my son's welfare had led to this moment of complete betrayal. I need until tomorrow morning to decide, I said, knowing I was buying time not to change my mind, but to plan my response. Jason hesitated, clearly preferring immediate compliance, but eventually nodded. Tomorrow at 9 a.m., either you sign the papers or you start packing. As he gathered his documents and headed toward the stairs, he paused and looked back at me with something that might have been regret, though it was quickly replaced by determination. This is not personal, Mom. It is just business. You will understand eventually that this arrangement benefits everyone. After he left, I sat in the silence of my basement room, holding the coffee mug that suddenly felt like the last tangible connection to the life Frank and I had built together. I realized that Jason was wrong about one thing. This was entirely personal, and tomorrow morning he would discover exactly how personal it had become. The 3 days following Jason's ultimatum passed in a strange state of calm determination, as if the shock of his betrayal had cleared away years of confusion and self-doubt about my situation. While Jason and Amanda waited upstairs for my surrender, I quietly began the most important research project of my life, one that would reveal possibilities they had never considered. My first call was to the law office of David Martinez, an estate planning attorney whose advertisement I had seen in the Senior Center newsletter. His receptionist scheduled an emergency consultation for the next afternoon, which I attended, while Jason and Amanda assumed I was grocery shopping for the family dinner I had been commanded to prepare. David Martinez turned out to be a man in his 50s with kind eyes and a patient demeanor that reminded me of Frank. When I explained my situation, he listened carefully, taking notes and asking detailed questions about the property transfer I had signed in 2020. Mrs. Thompson, I need to review the exact language of your deed transfer, he said, pulling up property records on his computer. The type of life estate you described could have several different legal implications. As he read through the documents, his eyebrows raised slightly. This is very interesting. You retained what is called a life estate with remainder to your son. That means you have the right to live on the property for your entire natural life, but it also means you retain certain ownership rights that your son might not understand. He explained that, while Jason owned the property, I retained the legal right to make decisions about its disposition during my lifetime. More importantly, I could revoke the life estate under certain circumstances, particularly if the remainder beneficiary acted in ways that violated the spirit of the original agreement. Can you explain that in simpler terms? I asked, feeling a spark of hope I had not experienced in months. You can take the house back, David said simply. If your son is threatening eviction or coercing you financially, those actions constitute a breach of the implied covenant of care that underlies most family property transfers. You have grounds to revoke the deed and resume full ownership. Over the next hour, David outlined my options with surgical precision. I could revoke Jason's ownership and immediately regain full control of the property. I could then choose to sell the house, modify the deed, or maintain ownership while living elsewhere. The decision was entirely mine to make. What would happen to Jason and his family if I revoked the deed? I asked, needing to understand the full implications of my choices. They would have no legal right to remain on the property, David replied. You could require them to leave immediately, or you could negotiate terms for their departure. If you chose to sell the property, they would have no claim to the proceeds. I spent the rest of that afternoon researching my other options. I visited Golden Years Senior Living Community, a well-regarded facility 15 minutes from my current neighborhood. The community offered independent living apartments, social activities, and graduated care options for residents who needed additional assistance as they aged. The apartment I toured was a spacious 2-bedroom unit with a full kitchen living room and balcony overlooking a garden courtyard. The monthly fee was $2,200, which included utilities, basic cable, and access to all community amenities. With my pension and the proceeds from selling the house, I could afford this lifestyle comfortably for decades. More importantly, Golden Years offered the social connections I had been missing since Frank's death. The community center buzzed with activity book clubs, exercise classes, organized trips, and volunteer opportunities. I met several residents during my tour, women who had faced similar family challenges and found independence and dignity in their new living arrangements. That evening, while preparing what I already knew would be my last family dinner, I continued my research online. Property values in our neighborhood had increased dramatically due to gentrification and development. Our house, purchased for $62,000 in 1981, was now worth approximately $485,000. I also researched Jason and Amanda's financial situation through public records and social media posts. Despite their claims of poverty, Amanda regularly posted pictures of expensive restaurants, new clothing purchases, and weekend trips. Jason had recently bought a new truck, financing it for 72 months at a premium interest rate. Their financial crisis was largely self-created through lifestyle choices rather than genuine hardship. On the second day, I met again with David Martinez to review the legal paperwork for revoking the deed. The process was surprisingly simple, requiring only my signature and proper filing with the county recorder's office. David recommended also preparing a sale contract with a property developer who had been purchasing homes in our neighborhood for renovation and resale. Mrs. Thompson, you should understand that this decision will likely end your relationship with your son permanently, David warned. Family property disputes rarely heal completely. Are you prepared for that possibility? I thought about Jason's cold calculation of my worth, Amanda's dismissive treatment, and the months of isolation in my basement room. I considered the little boy who had once promised to care for me forever, and the man who now threatened me with homelessness for refusing to surrender my financial independence. My relationship with my son ended when he decided I was worth more to him as a financial asset than as his mother, I replied. I am simply making that reality official. The third day was devoted to practical preparations. I contacted a moving company and arranged for storage of items I could not immediately take to my new apartment. I sorted through 40 years of possessions, keeping only those with genuine sentimental value or practical utility for my new life. I also visited my bank to understand the financial implications of my decision. The sale of the house would provide approximately $460,000 after taxes, legal fees, and real estate commissions. Invested conservatively, this amount would generate approximately $2,000 monthly in additional income, bringing my total monthly resources to over $4,800. For the first time in months, I felt financially secure and emotionally hopeful about my future. I would have a comfortable home, sufficient income, and the freedom to make my own choices about how to spend my remaining years. On Thursday evening, I prepared my final family dinner pot roast with vegetables, Jason's childhood favorite that I had cooked hundreds of times over the years. As we ate together for the last time, I watched my son and daughter-in-law discuss their plans for renovating the kitchen and adding a deck to the backyard projects they intended to fund with my pension money. Neither of them asked about my decision regarding their ultimatum, apparently confident that I had no choice but to accept their terms. Amanda chatted about names for the new baby while Jason described his plans for converting my basement room into a home office once I was settled upstairs in the smaller bedroom. After dinner, I retreated to my basement room and spent the evening writing a letter that explained my decision. I wanted Jason to understand not just what I was doing, but why his actions had made this choice inevitable. The letter required several drafts before I captured the right tone, neither angry nor pleading, but simply honest about how completely he had broken the bonds of trust and love between us. Friday morning arrived gray and drizzly, matching my somber mood as I prepared to execute the plan that would change both our lives forever. I dressed carefully in the blue dress Frank had always said brought out my eyes, applied lipstick for the first time in months, and gathered the legal documents that would restore my independence. At exactly 9 a.m., I climbed the stairs from the basement to face my son's ultimatum with an answer he would never see coming. At 9:15 on Friday morning, I sat across from Jason and Amanda at the kitchen table where I had served thousands of family meals, holding the documents that would either ensure my complete subjugation or my absolute freedom. The legal papers David Martinez had prepared lay in my purse like a loaded weapon, while Jason's ultimatum papers waited on the table between us like a declaration of war. "Well, Mom, what is your decision?" Jason asked, his tone suggesting he already knew the answer and was merely completing a formality. Amanda sat beside him, holding Emma on her lap, while scrolling through her phone, apparently bored by this final negotiation. "Before I answer, I want to tell you both something." I began, my voice steadier than I had expected. "For 40 years, your father and I built this house into a home. We painted every room, planted every flower in the garden, and filled every corner with love and memories. When I signed the deed over to you, Jason, I believed I was protecting our family legacy." Jason shifted impatiently. "Mom, we have been through this. We need your answer about the pension arrangement." "I am giving you my answer," I continued, "but I want you to understand exactly what you have asked me to do. You want me to surrender my financial independence, become completely dependent on your goodwill, and accept whatever scraps of dignity you choose to allow me." Amanda looked up from her phone with an expression of practiced patience. "Rosie, we are offering you security and care. Many seniors would be grateful for this kind of family support." "Family support," I repeated, tasting the bitter irony of those words. "Is that what you call threatening your mother with homelessness unless she hands over her life savings?" The question hung in the air for a moment before Jason responded with renewed firmness. "We call it practical financial planning for a household with limited resources and growing responsibilities." I reached into my purse and pulled out David Martinez's business card, placing it on the table next to Jason's documents. "I spent this week consulting with an attorney about my legal options. Do you know what I discovered?" Jason's confident expression flickered slightly. "What are you talking about?" "I learned that the deed transfer I signed gives you ownership of this house, but it does not give you the right to evict me or coerce me financially. I also learned that I retain the legal right to revoke that deed under certain circumstances." Amanda's phone hit the table with a sharp crack. "What does that mean?" "It means I am taking my house back," I announced, pulling out the revocation papers David had prepared. "As of this afternoon, when these documents are filed with the county recorder, I will resume full ownership of this property. You will have 60 days to find alternative housing arrangements." The silence that followed was deafening. Jason stared at the papers as if they were written in a foreign language, while Amanda's face cycled through confusion, disbelief, and growing fury. "You cannot do that," Jason said, finally his voice rising. "This is our home. We have invested time and money in improvements. Amanda is pregnant. You cannot just throw us out." "I am not throwing you out," I corrected. "I am giving you the same 30-day notice you gave me, plus an additional 30 days out of consideration for Amanda's pregnancy. That is more generous than you were prepared to be with your own mother." Amanda finally found her voice. "This is insane. You are an elderly woman living alone. You need our help and support. What will you do in this big house by yourself?" I pulled out the Golden Years brochure and placed it beside the legal documents. "I will not be living here alone. I have secured a beautiful apartment at this senior community where I will have social activities, new friends, and the independence to make my own choices." Jason grabbed the brochure, scanning it desperately. "Mom, this place costs over $2,000 a month. You cannot afford that on your pension alone." "You are right," I agreed, "which is why I'm selling the house." The words hit Jason like a physical blow. He actually stumbled backward in his chair, nearly dropping Emma, who began to cry from the sudden tension in the room. "Selling the house," he whispered. "You cannot sell our family home. This is where I grew up, where Emma is growing up. This house is supposed to be my inheritance." "Your inheritance was contingent on treating me with love and respect," I replied. "You chose to treat me like a financial resource to be exploited. That choice has consequences." Amanda's fury finally erupted. "You selfish old woman! We have been caring for you, providing you with a home and family. This is how you repay our kindness." Her words were so divorced from reality that I almost laughed. "Caring for me. You moved me to the basement, demanded my money, treated me like unpaid help, and threatened me with eviction when I could not give you enough. That is not care, Amanda. That is abuse." Jason was studying the legal documents with growing panic. "How much are you selling for? What happens to the money?" "The house is worth approximately $485,000, I informed them. "The proceeds will fund my retirement at Golden Years, where I can live comfortably and independently for the rest of my life." The full implications of their loss were beginning to sink in. Not only were they losing their free housing, but they were also losing access to the money they had planned to inherit. Their financial calculations had been based on controlling both my pension and my property. Now, they would have neither. "Mom, please think about this rationally," Jason pleaded, his anger giving way to desperate negotiation. "We can work out a better arrangement. Maybe you keep more of your pension money. Maybe we adjust the household responsibilities. We do not have to blow up the family over a misunderstanding." "This was not a misunderstanding," I said firmly. "This was your deliberate decision to prioritize money over our relationship. You researched my financial situation, calculated my value to your household, and presented me with an ultimatum designed to make me completely dependent on your charity." Amanda tried a different approach. "Think about Emma and the new baby. Do you really want to make your grandchildren homeless? What kind of grandmother puts her own comfort ahead of her family's welfare?" The manipulation was breathtaking in its audacity. After months of limiting my access to Emma and treating me like hired help, Amanda was now invoking my love for my granddaughter as a weapon against my decision. "I am thinking about Emma," I replied. "I am thinking about what kind of example I want to set for her about allowing herself to be treated with respect. I am thinking about teaching her that love does not require accepting abuse and that self-respect is worth more than false security." I stood up from the table and gathered my documents. "The moving truck will be here Monday morning to collect my belongings. The real estate agent will contact you next week about scheduling showings. I suggest you use the next 60 days to find suitable housing and employment that actually covers your expenses." Jason made one final desperate attempt. "What if we give you back control of your pension? What if Amanda apologizes and we start over with a better arrangement?" I looked at my son, seeing clearly for the first time in months the man he had chosen to become. His offer was not motivated by love or genuine remorse, but by panic at losing the financial benefits of my presence. Jason, you showed me exactly who you are when you thought you had complete power over my life, I said sadly. People do not fundamentally change because their manipulation stops working. They just get better at hiding their true nature. As I walked toward the basement stairs for the last time, Amanda called after me with venom in her voice. You will regret this decision. You will be lonely and miserable in that old folks' home, and we will not be there to help you when you need us. I paused at the top of the stairs and looked back at the woman who had systematically dismantled my place in my own family. Amanda, I have been lonely and miserable for months while living in the same house with you. At least now I will be lonely and miserable with dignity and independence. That afternoon, David Martinez and I filed the deed revocation papers at the county recorder's office. By 5 p.m., I was once again the legal owner of the house Frank and I had built into a home, and Jason and Amanda were officially tenants with 60 days' notice to vacate. The young couple who had threatened me with homelessness now faced that exact prospect themselves, while the elderly woman they had tried to control had just secured her freedom with a single signature. 6 months later, as I sit in my sunny apartment at Golden Years, writing these words, I can see the changes that freedom has brought to every aspect of my life. The transformation has been more profound than I ever imagined possible, touching not just my living situation, but my entire sense of self-worth and possibility. My apartment is exactly what I had hoped for when I first toured the facility, spacious, comfortable, and entirely mine to control. The 2 bedrooms give me space for both sleeping and hobbies, while the full kitchen allows me to cook whatever I want, whenever I want it. The balcony overlooks a garden where residents grow vegetables and flowers together, creating beauty through shared effort rather than obligation. More importantly, I have rediscovered the joy of making choices about how to spend my time. I joined the community book club where we discuss everything from mystery novels to historical biographies with passionate intensity. Tuesday mornings find me in the pool for water aerobics, stretching muscles that had grown stiff from months of stress and limited movement. Thursday afternoons, I volunteer at the local library, helping children with reading skills and sharing stories that connect generations. My finances, once a source of anxiety and manipulation, have become a source of security and pride. The sale of the house yielded $462,000 after all expenses, which I invested in a diversified portfolio that generates approximately $2,000 monthly in addition to my pension. With total monthly income of over $4,800 and housing costs of $2,200, I have more discretionary money than I have enjoyed since Frank's death. I have used some of that financial freedom to reconnect with old friends and pursue interests that had been neglected during the years of caregiving and financial stress. Last month, I took a weekend trip to visit my college roommate in Charleston, my first vacation in over 3 years. Next spring, I am planning a cruise to Alaska with 2 women from my book club, an adventure that would have been impossible under Jason's financial control. The social connections at Golden Years have been equally transformative. My closest friend here is Martha, a 72-year-old retired teacher whose own story of family betrayal mirrors mine in heartbreaking detail. Her son had convinced her to invest her life savings in his failing business, leaving her nearly destitute before she found the courage to seek legal help and recover her remaining assets. The hardest part, Martha told me during one of our evening walks, is accepting that the children we raised with love and sacrifice can become people we no longer recognize. It feels like grieving someone who is still alive. Her words capture exactly the complex grief I continue to process. I mourn the loss of the son I thought I knew. The family relationships I had hoped would sustain me through aging, and the simple security of believing that love and sacrifice create lasting bonds. But I also celebrate the discovery of my own resilience, the possibility of creating new family connections, and the freedom that comes from refusing to accept unacceptable treatment. Jason and Amanda found an apartment across town just before their 60-day deadline expired. Jason returned to work full-time while Amanda manages their 2 children in a much smaller space than they had enjoyed in our family home. According to mutual acquaintances, they struggle financially without my monthly contributions and free childcare, exactly as any reasonable person might have predicted. Emma is now 2.5 years old, walking and talking and growing into her own personality. I see her occasionally at public places like the grocery store or library, always accompanied by Amanda, who maintains a cold politeness that discourages any real interaction. Emma no longer recognizes me as family, which breaks my heart in ways I struggle to articulate. Their second child, a boy they named Michael, was born in February. I learned about his arrival through a mutual friend, not from Jason, who has maintained complete silence since the day I revoked the deed. He has not called, written, or made any attempt to repair our relationship, confirming my belief that his feelings for me were always contingent on my usefulness to his plans. The silence is painful, but not surprising. Jason's pride cannot tolerate the reality that his manipulation failed, that the elderly mother he tried to control outsmarted him completely, and exposed his true character to everyone who knows our story. He would rather have no relationship than one where I retain independence and self-respect. Some people, including well-meaning staff here at Golden Years, have suggested that I reach out to Jason, that family relationships are worth preserving regardless of past conflicts. But I have learned to distinguish between loneliness and solitude, between family connection and family obligation. Loneliness is wanting someone to share your joys and sorrows, but having no one available. Solitude is choosing to be alone, rather than accepting poor treatment from people who should love you better. I experienced profound loneliness during those months in the basement, surrounded by family members who treated me as a burden and a resource rather than a person worthy of respect. Now I experience occasional solitude, but it is solitude by choice, surrounded by people who value my company and contribution. The difference is transformative in ways that extend far beyond simple social interaction. I have also gained perspective on the broader pattern that led to Jason's betrayal. His behavior did not emerge suddenly when financial pressure mounted. It developed gradually as he and Amanda began to see me as an impediment to their lifestyle rather than a person with independent value. The basement move, the financial contributions, and the childcare expectations were all steps in a process of reducing my humanity to my utility. Understanding this pattern has helped me forgive myself for the months of cooperation and accommodation. I was not naive or weak for trying to maintain family harmony. I was applying the lessons of compromise and sacrifice that had sustained my marriage and my relationship with Jason throughout his childhood. But those lessons, appropriate for relationships built on mutual respect and love, became tools for my own exploitation when applied to people who had stopped seeing me as fully human. The most profound lesson of this experience is that love without respect is not love at all, but manipulation disguised as affection. Jason claimed to love me while treating me in ways he would never tolerate for himself. Amanda spoke of family care while systematically isolating me from meaningful participation in family life. Real love requires seeing the other person as an autonomous individual with their own needs, desires, and dignity. It requires sacrificing for their welfare while respecting their right to make their own choices. Jason and Amanda demanded my sacrifices while denying my autonomy, which is not love but exploitation. As I finish writing this story, I am preparing for another evening of activities that I chose: freely dinner with Martha and 2 other residents, followed by a documentary film in the community center. Tomorrow I will attend a lecture about local history work in the garden and call my college roommate to plan our next visit. My days are full of purpose, connection, and small pleasures that I had forgotten were possible. I wake up each morning grateful for the courage I found to choose dignity over false security, independence over manipulation, and self-respect over family obligation. Do I miss the son I thought I raised every single day? Do I regret the decision that saved my own life from his control? Not for a moment. The house I lost was just wood and brick windows and doors that could be replaced or renovated. The home I found was within myself, in the recognition that I deserved better treatment than I was accepting, and in the courage to demand it, even when the cost seemed impossibly high. If you are facing a similar situation, whether with adult children, spouses, or other family members who confuse love with control, I want you to know that you have more power than you realize. Legal rights, financial resources, and personal autonomy can be reclaimed even after years of gradual erosion. But more importantly, your dignity and self-respect are not negotiable commodities to be traded for false security or temporary peace. You deserve relationships built on mutual respect and genuine care, not obligation and manipulation disguised as love. Sometimes the strongest thing you can do is walk away from people who refuse to treat you with basic human decency, even when those people share your DNA and your history. Sometimes saving yourself requires disappointing people who should have loved you better. And sometimes the signature that erases someone else's future is the same signature that finally secures your own. Have any of you faced similar situations with family members who tried to control your finances or living situation? How did you find the courage to reclaim your independence? I would love to hear your stories in the comments below. Please, like this video if it resonated with your own experiences and subscribe for more stories about finding strength in unexpected places. Share this with anyone who might need to hear that they deserve better treatment than they are currently accepting. Thank you for listening to my story. And remember that it is never too late to choose yourself over people who refuse to value you properly. Until next time, may you find the courage to demand the respect you deserve, no matter who refuses to give it.